All right, folks, I'm live now. We just ended the show, so let me get things a little arranged here. The camera's all off. I'll wait for y'all to get in here, of course. All right. Going live. All right. We got one person watching. That could be me. So I'll just kind of wait till y'all get here. Those of you who wanted to be here. And we'll see what's going on. Probably won't save this to the archives. Hey, Matt. How you doing, brother? All right. Trying to get situated. I shoved my computer and everything was all discombobulated on my desk. So just trying to line her all back up here after the show. All right. Good to see you. I'm glad I got that book off today. They said by next Tuesday it should be there. So it could be any time. I've seen them arrive in 2 days on that book rate, and usually about 5 business days. You have contractor problems today? Mikey Hootie, good to see you, brother. I don't know if you were in the show, Mike, but we're just doing a little post live stream tonight. So, oh, you've just had your fill of contractors today. I get it. Michelle, how you doing? Hey, Audrey. All right. I got a mic here, but I don't need it up. So it'll pick me up. I can even have it out of the screen and it'll pick me up. So it's all right there, this far from my face. So it just looks big because of the foreshortening, the camera lens. I think I showed you all that yesterday. See, if I get up close, right up to my mic, that's what you get. So just looks big because of the camera. Teresa, how you doing? All right. Hey, field guy. This won't be long. It was just for a little fun afterward. I mentioned the book by Stephen Ambrose, the late Stephen Ambrose. I'm looking to see if I have it on my shelf right over there, and I don't think I do. The book Undaunted Courage. You can look it up at Amazon. And it was, pardon me, I'm doing very unethical. I am, but since this is not official radio, I'm eating a little something. But his book, I read it, 15 years ago. And of course, Stephen Ambrose is now the late Stephen Ambrose, American historian. He wrote a lot about American history. And he was the one that really got me deeply interested in the Lewis and Clark expedition, because I'd heard a lot about it and wanted to know more about it. And I got his book, and I think I got it on audio tape, and I listened to it while I was driving for the longest time to get through it. And then we took a trip, and I listened to it through a trip about maybe almost 20 years ago now, when I read that book and listened to it. And I'm just going to get that out of the way. And so I learned a lot about the history of Lewis and Clark, just like the way Dee Brown did with his book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, about the Native American experience during the expansion into the West. Stephen Ambrose really wrote kind of the same way. Stephen Ambrose, you'd recognize him. He wrote the book Band of Brothers about the men, I don't remember what unit it was, but who served in World War II. And they made that sterling mini series on that several years ago now. Very good. So that's Stephen Ambrose. That's the kind of work he does. And I had mentioned, I think last night, and then it got mentioned again tonight, that I have these. So I got a chip in my throat. That, by the way, is Coke, watered down by the melted ice. Oh, well, it's wet and cold. Any port in a storm, eh? And I was doing the reenacting circuit years ago. I've mentioned that before. We did the 42nd Royal Highlanders that were part of the red-coated part of the Scottish units with the British Army in the French and Indian War in the late 1750s. And yeah, water with a little Coke. That's about it, Matt. Colored with Coke. And I have to drink Diet Coke, not because I'm dieting, but because I can't do the sugar. So anyway, while on this the circuit we did, the reenacting circuit, we would do some of the reenactments around the country. We would also we had about 20 guys and our wives or girlfriends, some of the kids, my older kids when they were little. We'd all do we didn't even call them costuming. We called it period clothing. We would make, the uniforms. We wore the kilts. The kids and the women all wore period clothing, historical clothing. We made all this stuff. You get a bunch of big burly guys who shoot muskets and sword fight and things like that. All watch us sitting in a garage one day sewing, hand stitching our redcoats to the patterns of the British redcoats in the 1700s. And I have somewhere around here is my musket, but I've got it all taken apart. I took the lock all out. My dad had one. He wanted to see certain parts about how the mechanism works. And so I took it all the lock mechanism out of it. So it doesn't have the lock in it right now. But the musket was sitting here. I don't know where it is now. It's buried between bookshelves somewhere down the row here somewhere. So, and it was there doing this circuit. I met a man. I don't even remember his name now. He would do a little Lewis and Clark exhibition. He would set up the big troop tents, the canvas tents. He actually did a replica of the mast that would have been on the bateau that Lewis and Clark used when they went up the rivers. And he was part of a wealthy family. And to say it, the simplest way to say it. And he had so much interest in this topic that he did prototypes of these action figures he did of Lewis and Clark. Hey, Barry, I see you're here. You made it here. Going to talk about Lewis and Clark. I lived on that trail after the expedition. It was interesting. I would love, by the way, to take my family down, like on a canoe trip down the Limhi Pass or something like that. I would love to, which I have not done yet, but to take a little trip like that, an expedition like that. And doesn't this camera look different? I'm seeing myself on the screen without my scroll bar and all my logos and stuff all over. It's wide open. So that's why everything's kind of like this to accommodate for putting in all the logos and things. Well, anyway, hey, Kevin, how you doing? That's KDO from Minnesota. That's Kevin, my good friend for many, many years down there. My daughters are 28. I've known Kevin since they were 6 months old. So Kevin and I have known each other for 27 and a half years. So it's good to have you in here, Kevin. Yeah, Scotty in the Raw. So here we are. All that's different from the show. As you know, I pre-record them in the day. I recorded that probably around noon today. But I've been out in the wind and all that other stuff. And so I'm a little more buffeted by wind and experience throughout the day. So I've got these action figures. This fellow, and I can't remember his name. It was years ago. I don't think it was before I met Rainey, so I think it's about 10, 11, 12 years ago that I got these action figures from him. He had done these to do, hopefully do a major run of these and try to get History Channel and probably other places like that, Smithsonian, interested in him, which it never took off for him. He never got the contracts he wanted, but he had sunk a lot of money into designing these. And I showed these on my show once before, maybe a year or more ago. So some of you might recognize some of these, but I've got them here. It took me a while. We had rearranged this office, added more bookshelves, and Rainey was a little irritated with me because I said, what happened to the action figures? They were up there on that bookshelf. And so I almost canceled this little afterward for doing that, but she found them at the last minute, so I got them here. And I want to show you these. And I don't know if I saw Steve in here or not. Steve said he is related somehow to Captain William Clark. But let's start with Lewis, because that's the way we say it. We say Lewis and Clark. So I'll show you these. Now, this is the stuff that this old friend of mine, and I could say acquaintance because we're not friends. I don't remember his name, but he had some of these on hand, and he gave these to me. And this is the box that he had done for these. Now, this is the action figure for Captain Meriwether Lewis. And it says historically accurate, highly detailed adventure figure. And he went through Manitou Free Traders was the name of the little booth he had at the, I was trying to get the lights not to shine on this. And so you can see, you know, he went through the whole thing, the details on the back of this box. Now, I have not removed these things from the box. My older son, my 19-year-old boy, Sam, he had to be 8 or 9, the age Flynn, a little older than Flynn is now, younger than Flynn is now. He wanted so bad to open these things up. And I almost let him once, and I said, no, Dad's going to keep those. So, Steve, here is your one of your ancestors, Meriwether Lewis. Now, you've got to see the detail he put into this. This box opens up this way, and it's like this. Now, I'm trying to get this so the lights don't shine on all these things. But here is Meriwether Lewis, and the action figure himself is patterned after, you know, paintings and drawings we've had of Meriwether Lewis. It has the different hands that have his gloves. It's got his canvas haversack with the lead closures on it. That thing opens up, although I've never taken it out of here. He told me that opens up. It's got papers in it. The oar, the powder horn, the hat that Lewis wore. You can see, I thought he had a picture of him wearing the hat, but he doesn't. So there's Meriwether Lewis. And this is all the gear that he made up for these action figures. It's got the different swords. It's got the bayonet in a bayonet case. This is a baton. I can't remember what the name of those were. Like an official baton. He's got a musket pistol. He's got the 2 flintlock muskets with a tomahawk and a knife. And this little satchel is the leather satchel that he gave, I believe, to Thomas Jefferson. You open that up, and he showed me some of the ones he had out of the box. He's got this whole thing is full of sheaves of miniatures of all of Meriwether Lewis's diaries and writings, his journals and maps and things like that. So I thought that was pretty darn cool. And that when I have more room, and I've had more room in my office past studio, I put these things up on a shelf and I keep them open up and put them on display. Now, that's what I wanted to show you was these things. Now, this is Meriwether Lewis. And one thing, I made mention of it the other night, and I'm sorry the lights are all just shining. I don't have them set up for this kind of shot. But Meriwether Lewis suffered from, they believe, what would be bipolar depression or manic depressive. And that he committed suicide and tried a couple of times, shot himself in the chest a couple of times before he died. And that was within just a year or 2, maybe 3 years after the whole Lewis and Clark expedition. He fell into a deep depression. And there are some that say there were things, there's always a conspiracy theory somewhere that he didn't commit suicide, that he was murdered. He was, after all, shot twice in the chest. So that is one of the theories. He committed suicide. And is there something missing here? I just noticed there's this big curved piece here that's hollowed out. I don't think there's nothing fallen to the bottom in there, and everything's intact. So I couldn't tell you. Maybe he had this. Remember, he did 2 of these, and I'll show you the other one in a second. But so Meriwether Lewis, he had a great history, but he also had some personal difficulties. And he ended up committing suicide, for all we know about him. Now, there's Meriwether Lewis. Now, let me show you Captain William Clark. And that one, very similar. Captain William Clark. That's the kind of hat that he's wearing here that Meriwether Lewis would have had inside. Again, information about him and the company. Here, this is for you, Steve. He says, Lieutenant William Clark was a military man. Before accepting the assignment of co-commander of the Corps of Discovery, he had served as a lieutenant of the infantry. He was comfortable with the military lifestyle of the frontier and cognizant of the dangers and the hardships it could present. Being of strong mind and body at age 33, he was a good choice for co-commanding the expedition to discover the famed Northwest Passage, a water route to the Pacific Ocean. His official military rank was Lieutenant of the Artillery, the only commission available at the time. However, the members of the Corps only knew him as captain and co-leader. Clark was also well-versed in astronomy and map-making. 3 years after leaving Clark and the Corps, he reached St. Louis in September of 1806 after traveling a total of 8,000 miles. Following the success of the expedition, Clark became the governor of the Missouri Territory and then went on to serve as superintendent of Indian Affairs until shortly before his death in 1838. So there's Captain William Clark. Now here's his gear. I'll show you him sculpted out. And these are prototypes, but they're done as if they were going to manufacture these and mass produce them. So here you have William Clark in his uniform. They've got the extra hands if you wanted to put them on with the white gloves. And again, his haversack at the bottom, his compass, his paddle or oar, and his big military hat. And of course, over on this side, they've got his sword. What is that? That's a tomahawk at the top. The long wooden handle, his knife, his bayonet and sheath for the bayonet. You've got his firelock musket with the strap, powder horn, a telescope, his pistol, and of course his sextant. And so this is the gear that my old friend put together for William Clark. And you can see these things are just stunning. And you're welcome, Steve. So this is a pretty cool thing. I'd like to write him and see if he has any more of these. But he gave these to me one year at one of our reenactments. I was going to pay him for them. And he said, and I didn't have money on me. He said, just take them. I'll get them from you next week. And or one of the next days. And I came in and I had money for him. And he said, don't worry about it. You keep those. And he says, you're a student of history. So there again, there's Captain Clark right there. And all of his cool stuff. And you know what? These things, I thought these were too cool, too much of a collector's item to crack them ever out of this stuff. I told my son, I said, you can't play with this stuff. Dude, I'm sorry. You can look at them, but you can't play with them. Now, who was the, let's test your knowledge. Some of you will know this right off the top of your head. Who was the third most important person to the Lewis and Clark expedition? You should know this right off the top of your head. Yeah, these are dad toys. Who was the third most important person? Do you know? There it is, field guy. Mike Yehudi, Sacagawea or Sacagawea. I've heard it different ways. He did a figure for her as well. There you go. This is the box for her. Sacagawea or Sacagawea. And her young baby, who she carried on her back through a lot of this expedition. Here, let's read a little bit about her. And we'll come back and we'll do Meriwether Lewis too, because we didn't read his. Sacagawea was a member of the Aguadira Shoshone Nation, and before being captured and enslaved by the Mandan Nation as a young girl, she married Pierre Toussaint Charbonneau, the French fur trader, and gave birth to a son in October of 1804, known as Pomp, Mandan for firstborn. His true name was Jean-Baptiste. Charbonneau was his last name. Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau. Jean-Baptiste. Charbonneau was hired by Lewis and Clark to accompany the Corps of Discovery, and having two wives to choose from, he chose to take Sacagawea or Sacagawea on the expedition. There's no known likeness of Sacagawea. Her features here have been modeled on contemporary descendants of the Shoshone origin. She's wearing a blue beaded women's belt and abalone hair ornaments. Her dress is a 3-skin hide dress decorated in a simple style common to the Mandan. Devoted member of the expedition and the only female, she remains one of the most recognized Native American women. She's credited as a navigator, interpreter, and a negotiator. Upon reaching the Pacific Ocean, she was afforded 1 vote in the democratic process of selecting the site for their winter quarters. This was the first known recorded vote by a woman or a Native American in all of American history, United States history. So this is what she looks like. And they based, because they had no photos or anything of her or likenesses, they based this. She's gotten a little tossed around in here, I see. And there's 1 foot that's kind of up, but here she is. And they based her features, you can see in the painting, on Shoshone women. And so trying to avoid the reflections. She didn't have much gear, so there's nothing over on this side. But she had her little papoose, the little baby. And she had her haversack and some of her stuff, a little quiver and a paddle, a mirror, a knife, and a pouch of some kind. I'm not sure what this was for. But they dressed her very traditionally. This is not your cartoon Indians, but this is how they would have dressed. I got 1 foot. I wish I could get in there to push the foot down. That was pushed up somehow. It's been that way since I've owned these. But there she is. And the description of what she's wearing on the back. And so that's Sacagawea. Now, what also came with this set, which I couldn't locate tonight, it was out of the box, was a campfire. And this little campfire, I'm not sure where that went. It used to be right up there on top of the bookshelf. Let me take a quick peek and see if it still is. I'm just not seeing it. Yeah, this might be it right here. Let's see. Hang on. Somebody put a chair in the way. Let's see. Yep, that's it. Okay. Now, this has steel chair in the way. Now, this is also, he made this little campfire to go with this set. And it looks like this. And what's really cool is you push the button and here's what happens. The lights come on. Let's see. Hold on a second. The lights come on. Yeah, there's not enough battery left here right now. If I had the plug in, I could plug this in. But there's a little fan underneath here. And that fan blows these, you can see, these fake flames will blow up really strong, and the light illuminates them, so it looks like yellow fire flickering. Let me just see if I happen to have, if my plugin will work on this that's over here. Hang on a second so I can give you the full effect. Hang on a second. Where is the port? Right there. Let's see if this one works. Hang on. Let me go around to the back side of my computer. Let's see what we can find here. This one might work. It might work, but it might not reach. Oh, that works nicely. Hang on, I got to go around, and you know how offices are and desks and all the things that you have attached to them. This one, I have so many wires and so many things plugged into it that it's sometimes very interesting to try to get it all to work. Hang on. I'm going to get this wire out here. There we go. All right. I think we can do this now. Now, you saw how that was working. Look when I plug this thing in. There you go. Now, it's lost a couple of its flames over the years for just sitting, but that's what that campfire looks like. You tell me that's not cool? So that's how that works. And so, of course, this was made to be a complete set. These were all the pieces he had done for this. And so with the fire, you could actually set up your little Lewis and Clark characters and put them around the campfire. It's Chicago. So there you go. One of these days, I had to re-glue some of these things on here because they had fallen off. But I thought that was a pretty ingenious little way to create a fake campfire. So there you go. Boom. I'm going to turn the fire off now. Boom. There you go. So that, my friends, is the little set I was telling you about that I wanted you to see. Because we've talked about Lewis and Clark now. Well, I lost a flame. I'm going to have to pull that up here and glue that back on. That's what they look like. Don't want to lose that. It's really just something like Mylar, really thin Mylar that he used to do that. So there you go. There is my Lewis and Clark action figures. And I kind of wanted to share those with you. And so who all's in here that I didn't see earlier? SS. A little PC fan, strips of cloth, the right lighting. Boom, exactly. He's got those little LED lights in here. And you have to be very careful with these little strips, the ones that fell off. You see they're just glued in there. And where's my little button? So there it is with just the, it must charge itself a little bit because it's a little stronger by the battery than it was before. So, yep, there you go. I'm curious under the battery if it's not quite as strong. God, I just got to plug it in again because it's so damn cool. Hold on. Where's the plug in? There you go. There it is. There's your fire. A few LED lights that he's had put in there. And that's it. That's rocking. If you ask me, I love this kind of stuff. I build this kind of stuff. I gotta have the shop for it though. So there you go. Let me put this flame here so I don't forget to super glue that back on. And my cord. Okay. So that's what I promised you I'd show you. If you hadn't seen those before, yeah, those are some of my cool toys. I've got Star Trek toys over there too. Even cooler. But these are cool because they're historical. So I wish I could tell you could get these somewhere, but you can't. These are one-off items. I don't think you can find these things anywhere. Lewis and Clark action figures. I mean, you could probably look it up and see if he's got some of these for sale online anywhere. But these things are about, what if he's got a date on these when he did these? I'm sure he does. Copyright 2004 is when he did these. So that was about 16 years ago. 15 years ago, I picked them up. So there you go. Core of Discovery. Lewis and Clark, and his company was Manitou, Manitou, Manitou Free Traders. So there you go. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. And by the way, for those of you who are, you may have seen this on Rocky's show. I think we showed this. Found this in storage in the garage. I knew I had it. I just didn't know where it was. Rocky and I have talked about this from a paranormal aspect. And this is, you know, the spirit box that we use and that you see everywhere now in paranormal investigation. This is an original Frank's box. Remember they used to call the spirit box Frank's boxes? It's because a guy named Frank Sumption used to make them. He'd make these by hand and sell them, and he'd give some of them away. I happened to get one of his way back in, I think it was, I want to say it was 2009 or 2010 that he gave this to me. And I want to show you how sophisticated this device is. Look at this. Now, Spirit Box, of course, is a box that we use. We use the little device, much more modern than this one, that you pick up voices, spirit voices. And sometimes it's radio voices, so you have to be very careful. But this is the box that Frank Sumption made and gave me. You can see his signature, or at least his wood-burned signature up there. And this one's got, the batteries are almost dead, but you flip that on. And you can control the squelch and all of that. You can put an antenna on it with these. I have never used this in a, that's the sweep speed. Let's go back to this. So that's the volume. This is the row volume and the mono volume, a raw volume. So you could take this out and feasibly this would work, although I've never used it for that. Yeah, you hear Franklin Roosevelt from 1941? Probably not. But it would be interesting. We're going to take this out and experiment with it. Would anybody, while we're trying this, experimenting, would anybody like to say anything if you're out there? Neat experiment, huh? Is there anybody here that would like to talk? I just heard a voice. Anybody there? Could you try again? I actually did just hear somebody, I heard a sentence, but I couldn't make it out. Anybody have anything you'd like to say? Is there anybody here? And I don't know how to adjust this very well, but this is just speed. Sweep speed. If anybody'd like to talk through this, you've got about a minute, and I'm going to shut this down. Just a quick experiment. Anybody have anything to say? I'm Scott. I heard something there. No, we won't pick you up, field guy. Anybody want to talk to field guy? Say, hey, field guy. Let them know you're out there. Okay. Now I'm going to shut this down. We'll have to experiment with this one of these days. This is your FM antenna and your AM antenna. You just hook wires right up into these. So you've got direct and EC. I don't know what EC is. No clue what that is. Okay, thanks for your time. Power enough. You see how he's got all the instructions on this and all the labels all wood burned into that. So this is an original Frank's box, which was really the original Spirit box that was made. So there you go. There. That's all I got to show off tonight. So I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Yeah, Frank's box. Go look it up. Frank Sumption, just like it sounds. Just like scrumptious. Sumption, Sumption, I think. And he developed this. And he was a very quiet guy. Little guy, big mustache. Kind of quiet, so. Hey, Steph. I haven't seen you for a long time. Hope you're doing well. And, yeah, you heard something, didn't you, Steph? I heard a couple of things said on there. Really hard to tell what was said, though. This isn't the highest end of technology nowadays. But thanks, Durwood. I appreciate that. Said he'll haunt me if I die. Or if he dies. Yeah, Matt, it can be a little annoying listening to that stuff. So, yeah, you'll knock all my pictures unlevel. Cool. So there you go. There it is. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Hope you enjoy this series that we're doing. There's still a bit left to get up to Wounded Knee, which is really the climax of the Native American subjugation by the United States. I don't know what you all think of presenting this material. I think some people out there that don't know much about what I do or what we do, they see these shows and they think, oh, this is just another BLM movement type of thing. It's complaining about race issues and things like this. Is nothing of the sort. This is history. And we're going through history as we didn't see it because it wasn't written by the losers. It was written by the victors. And this is a book written by the losers, if you will, those who lost everything and their perspective on it. So I think it's important history to know. I don't think we should change much about who we are now. We're here. We wouldn't be here in the same form if this didn't happen to the Native Americans. It would be different. I've mused at some points, what if we had conducted ourselves with the chiefs and the tribes in very different ways? What if we had looked, how many of those chiefs did you hear through this series so far who said, I would have given the whites passage into my land. I would have let them cross over my land, build a road, maybe even build a railroad. I would have allowed them to be here. But if they had asked my permission, if we had worked together, he said, many of those chiefs said the earth is big enough for all of us. And yet we chose to decimate them, destroy them, move them off their land, and take their land from them. So we own it all. Now we own it all. But for how long? I think in current events, we're seeing things that in other historical cases have precipitated revolutions and civil wars and things like that. So it makes you wonder what's going to happen, what's going on. How long will we be a republic Ben Franklin, you have a republic, madam, if you can keep it. And so it's interesting. Yeah, Teresa, you all need to come over to my house and play. We should all set up some cool stuff. But, the Indians own most of Oklahoma now, as the treaties stated. I have to repeat it. I've repeated it a few times. I like what Justice Roberts said, John Roberts on the United States Supreme Court. In that decision, he said the United States needs to keep its word. Boom. All you've seen through all these different stories I've been telling over the last 6 weeks now, we've been on this series, is a story of we're giving you this land in perpetuity forever. Oops, until a few years later we discovered gold, or a century later we discovered uranium. Or, as was the case in northern Minnesota, you're hurting the tourism trade up here on the lakes because you're taking too many of your fish. Well, by treaty, the tribe up there had the right, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, they had the right on Lake Mille Lacs to take certain amounts of fish out of there, and they still do it. And they tried to weasel out of the treaty, the state of Minnesota, and close them out of that treaty because it said, well, there's nobody there that's still full-blooded Ojibwe, which, of course, they proved wrong. And so it still goes on today. Everything we've seen and we've been seeing in this series still goes on today in different forms. Only now it's legal. Now it's lawyers instead of the army or the cavalry. So anyway, there you go. I hope you're enjoying it. It's tough to enjoy sometimes because it's so damned heart-wrenching. And there are some funny points, and I think there's always ways to find lightness and lightheartedness. I found it very reassuring that some of these generals and colonels that we saw that were so bloodthirsty, it seemed, ended up a few years later. It was Three Fingers, was a Crook, Miles Crook, who said that he found the Sioux that he was working with at the agency to be some of the most respectable human beings he'd ever known. And he ended up writing a book about that. And there were others who were Indian agents out there that went on to work for civil rights as we knew them in the late 19th century. And so it was good stuff. It's heart-wrenching. It's heart-hurting. There are times, I got to tell you folks, and you know me, I could cry through half of the episodes because they hit me so hard and so gut-wrenching. And you don't know the times where I have to stop myself. And you take on that air of, I'm not going to let that do that to me today. I don't want to be the blubbering radio host. But we're going through this stuff, and it's so moving and so gut-wrenching and so heart-twisting that there are times that's all it takes is sometimes a turn of phrase. When I hear one of these chiefs, I'm reading a quote from one of these chiefs, and he said, and we lost everything, and he says, and it made my heart sad. And you say that, and you're just like, oh, man, I feel that. And that was Chief Joseph said that last night. He said, it makes my heart very sad. And he said, and his next phrase was, but as from where the sun stands at this moment, I will fight no more forever. They didn't want to fight. They fought because they had to. The younger ones, they said, the younger warriors coming up, they were ready to fight to the death. Some of the older ones too. But the older men were trying to preserve their people, while the younger men wanted to see their people live on, but they were willing to die fighting for what they had. And so, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to go through it sometimes, to read through it all, to recite it all, to talk about it. The recitation of history can sometimes be hard and harsh, and it hits you in the heart. And what I like about these stories that I've been telling you, what Dee Brown wrote about in Bury My Hearted Wounded Knee, is he puts humanity on these characters that we've only known through history. I grew up in the 60s as a little boy. We played cops and robbers. We played cowboys and Indians. And we had the stuff, the little feather chief headdresses that we got as souvenirs up north at the lake when I was like 4. Little rubber tomahawks and rubber drums. Dun, 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 dun. That's all we knew from the movies. And the Indians were always the bad guys. They were always portrayed. There was a certain segment of Hollywood during the 40s and the 50s and a little tiny bit into the 60s. But for those 2 decades, the Indians were always portrayed as the bad guys. And the cavalry were the good guys. And the white settlers were the good people that were always being raided. And on rare occasions, you would see the bad white guy or the good Indian. But they were already starting to see the Indian as noble. And that's what we did. We took everything they had away. We killed most of them off. And then decades later, we elevated them to a nobility status, the noble red man. And I compare that to, you can look at the Scottish Highlands. There was the Battle of Culloden Moor, the Scots against the British. Took place in 1746, where the Highland clans were fighting against Lord Cumberland of England. And I'm going to tell you a little something about that. Well, maybe we'll do the history of that someday, but Cumberland had heard that the Scots were, and Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was the rightful heir to the throne of Scotland, he heard that they were moving on London. So Cumberland moves all the way back down from Scotland down to London to head them off. Well, what happened was Bonnie Prince Charlie and all his men, they were within just 12 miles of London. And they thought Cumberland was there. That's where, I'm sorry, I mixed up the story. They thought Cumberland was in London with his troops. And they were counseling about it, and they finally said, we can't defeat Cumberland face on and take the city of London. They were this close to taking London and the throne of England. But for fear that Cumberland was there, they turned around and they went back north to Scotland. And they went up to Inverness, which is, it's the town that's right on the end, the northeast end of Loch Ness. Inverness. And it was kind of the Highland capital, if you will. And as they're going up to Inverness, Cumberland had scouts saying that they were coming, and Cumberland was laying actually in wait for them in Inverness. And they get back and they meet head on Culloden Moor, a marshy piece of rough ground outside of Inverness. You can still go visit it today. And there's old cairns and markers for all the clans that fell there that day. And that was 1776 in April. And that battle didn't last long, but it effectively ended the clan system in the Highlands of Scotland. And they took prisoners and so on. And the kilt was outlawed. Speaking Gaelic was outlawed. And they had the Highland clearances where they pulled all the Scottish clans out of the Highlands, either put them in prison, put them to death, or the king said, we have all this manpower, let's put them into the armies. And they found a way within just a few years to allow these clans and their clan chieftains to regain some semblance of their clan identity, in that they said, we will form the Highland regiments. And these clan chieftains put the money up to form their regiments. And they fought for the British king as the Scots. And the Scottish regiments, that's why you have all the red-coated, kilted Scots in the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War. You still have today. We portrayed the 42nd Royal Highlanders with our group, and the Black Watch, they were known as. And they are still an active unit today, as well as many of the other Highland regiments. So the Black Watch still exists today, and they fought in many battles for Great Britain over the years. So I liken that to what happened with the Native Americans. You had the clan system, you had the tribal system. You had the clearances of the Highlands, you had the clearances of Indian land. And then they became noble. Now, in the Victorian era, what happened? All of a sudden, 100 years later, it was the noble Highlanders. And everybody started wearing kilts. Queen Victoria wore a kilt. Queen Elizabeth, you'll see her in a kilt sometimes. Charles, Prince Charles, you'll see him in his kilt. And because they glorified it. And so it was a lot of it was some of it was the book written by it's Rob Roy, and it was written by I want to say Francis Scott Key. That's wrong. I can't remember the name. It'll come to me. He wrote Ivanhoe. He wrote Rob Roy wrote many novels, like the historical novels in the 1800s. And that's what really helped usher in this glorification of the Scots. Same thing with the Native Americans. So there you go. There's some crossovers. And we'll probably cover the Highland Scots one of these days as a bit of history. So there you go, folks. That's all. I said this would be a quickie. That's now been an hour, I think, since I came on, since we ended. So I wanted to show you those action figures because I talked about them a couple of times. And I hope you had a good time tonight. I hope you enjoy the shows. Tomorrow's Friday. It'll be our last show. Then we've got Sunday, last show for the week, and then Sunday. And so you guys all have a good night. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up here, even in this. I appreciate that. It's nice of you to come by and give me your time. And so that's it. That's all I got. So I'm going to click this little button down here and say good night. Thanks for being here. See you next time.